I wanted to kick it off because I looked up the definition of wellness and I thought it was very interesting. So
Oh,
maybe this will spark some conversation. Okay, so Berkeley Wellness Institute says wellness is different from health, as health is a state of being, like a moment, like a state, whereas wellness is an active process through which people become aware of and make choices toward a more successful existence. That includes physical, mental, and spiritual well being.
good morning.
Good morning. My voice feels like it's a lower octave this morning.
I don't know what mine feels. I am glad it's another Tuesday morning with you. Everyone, thanks for joining us. And we are so excited because we have started our new first deep dive series.
I'm very excited for our little mini series that we're going to do. And I think this first one is a good way to kick it off because it affects everyone and it's important. And I know we both are working on this aspect of our lives in different ways. It's like a continuous thing that we always have to work on, which is bum, 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 the wellness of our life.
I guess we should tell people we decided to call this our semi-selfish summer series because for me in a helping profession, my 9 to 5 is all about other people. And I think you and I both are chronic overthinkers about other people. I don't know if that's women. I don't know if that's our generation. I don't know. I'm sure there's layers upon layers of explanation, but we don't want to be full-fledged selfish because that's not nice. But a little bit, taking up a little bit of space for ourselves sounded like a good idea.
Yes, we are going with the cliche motto of, to fill other people's cups up, you have to fill your own. So I think you have to be a little selfish when it's called for to be able to make sure you're good so that you can show up in the world for A, yourself, but B, for others. So I do think it's very important.
And we just figured we'd take this first day as our intro day to kind of orient ourselves and y'all on what we're doing and kind of figure out the specific topics that we want to talk about. I guess I don't know how we really came to the conclusion of doing this, but I think it sort of piggybacked off of doing our mid-year check-in because both of us found some things that we felt like we could continue to work on. And like Kayla said, everything's a moving target. I mean, everyone's always working on themselves or has something that they're trying to work on, I hope. And I don't think I'm ever going to reach the pinnacle where I can just sit back and never consider any of these things ever again. So anyway, it seemed like a good time to sort of prioritize what does it even mean to be healthy to us? And then what does that look like realistically in the context of me being in my job, in the whole, healthcare helping profession life, and then Kayla being a new mom and having a human to keep alive.
Right? Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like there's a bunch of different facets and holes that squirt out about wellness and health, as you say. I think it's much more than just like physical appearance. I think it encapsulates a lot more, which we can talk about today, and like all those different avenues. And that way we can dive in deeper as we continue the series this July.
Hey, turkeys, real quick, we want to tell you about our fun new free craft corner. Every quarter, in line with the equinox or solstice, we are going to send out new arts and crafts projects. You can find the link in the show notes. Just drop us your email. We promise not to spam you, but we'd love for you to join us. Now back to the show.
I wanted to kick it off because I looked up the definition of wellness and I thought it was very interesting. So maybe this will spark some conversation. Okay, so Berkeley Wellness Institute says wellness is different from health, as health is a state of being, like a moment, like a state, whereas wellness is an active process through which people become aware of and make choices toward a more successful existence. That includes physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. So I love that it's like an active practice, just like you said, like we should always be growing and evolving and changing. I think that's what the whole journey of life is about. And to put that in the context of wellness, it's like it's a forward progress forward. It's not like you have to be there. You're always just trying to get better because there are so many different things that make up wellness. I don't know. I thought that was cool.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think that does make sense, that it's a practice, not a
Yes.
it's not a benchmark. That's the word I was looking for. It's something that you can do and embody and work on every day, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just the movement in that direction that makes it successful.
Yes.
I'm glad you shared the definition, because I had a whole thing when I was going through what does wellness mean to me about how the word itself makes me vomit, because it's so overused lately. And I'm so burnt out from corporate culture talking about health and wellness and self-care. I could gag on the word self-care. I've heard it so many times. And avoid burnout. And all of those things are so important. And they matter. And the words themselves are fine. It's just that they've been adulterated, like I said, by corporate culture. So I'm glad you brought the true definition so that I didn't have to sit here and stew in my own personal associations. But I do think
it's like looped in too much with health, like health and wellness. You always hear those two words together. I think breaking it apart and almost disassociating it from just being healthy and, being on a diet and being a certain weight, like that is where the culture has taken us. And I don't think that's really embodying the fullness of what we could, get into and explore within ourselves.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right. And I felt excited to do this mini series with you. One, because I just love talking about this stuff with you, but also because I knew that we could do it from a place of being authentic and being realistic, and without trying to sell somebody a class or without trying to promote some supplement that we're secretly selling. Like, so much of what I see online, it's just people showboating about trying to sell or panhandle whatever their little good or service or something is.
There's always an alternative motive. I feel like you're like, what are they about to sell me? What are they about to sell me? Gosh dang it.
It feels that way so strongly. So throughout this entire mini series that we're doing, we aren't sponsored by anybody. No one's paying us to promote anything. I mean, we'll take sponsorships, but only of things that I would actually use. So anyway, I think that that's also worth pointing out, is we're kind of trying to explore this and figure out what works in our life and what makes us feel more grounded, what makes us feel better. What does wellness mean to us? What do we feel like it even means to be healthy? And then realistically, how do we do that in our day-to-day lives with jobs and relationships and life, and not sit here and make fakey influencer videos about, how we get up at 5 a.m. when we really don't, or just whatever the case may be. I just raw dog.
I like it. I think it comes from the place of authenticity that we've always strove for, that we strive for. But I want to hear what you feel like wellness is. I have because I looked at the definition, I really felt like that kind of was like, oh yeah, that is what it means. Like I felt really good about that definition. I've got one sentence follow up on that, but I'm curious to hear what you feel like wellness is to you, besides a nasty word that's been overused in our culture today.
Yeah. I had to put that out there, and then I had to rant about that. And then once I got over that piece, I didn't really define wellness as its own term. I just sort of broke it down into what aspects I think support wellness. Although for me, I kind of realized that the overarching theme for myself is what wellness looks like for me is balance. Because we've talked about this before, and I've mentioned it before, that I can be very all or nothing about stuff. So I can be really all the way on or all the way off. And I sometimes can get a little too intense and then overdo things when I start off on trying to incorporate healthier habits, and then I wear myself out and then I shut it off completely.
Ditto. Yeah.
And I've gotten a lot better about that thanks to therapy, about being able to hold the middle ground and have discipline. But it's still a balance for me a lot of times of having a good routine and when to break that routine for something else, and kind of how to ease up on myself when I need a break, but how to know when I need to push through, because I have so many tangents I could go on. I realize that a lot of the information that I consume and a lot of the people that I listen to are men, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that what some of the stuff you and I have talked about with hormones has been very enlightening, because they're on a 24-hour hormone cycle. So they're sort of getting a bump every morning of testosterone. And I think just hormonally, it's probably easier for them to be consistent across the board, except for when they're sick, versus we have very definitive times of higher energy with more estrogen and more testosterone, and then times where our progesterone is peaking, where we're going to feel more tired and sluggish and bloated and sleepy and hungry. So it might not be as realistic to copy what men are doing when I don't have a man's body.
Mm-hmm.
The principles and the discipline and all of that need to be the same. But anyway, I can touch on this more later. But I just sort of realized, like, I've got to figure out what works for me and explore what's healthy for myself. And I probably need to mix in some women with some of the stuff that I listen to for a different perspective sometimes.
Yeah, that's a great point, because A, men's hormones are different, and B, a lot of the studies for certain things, like, when fasting took off and it was like intermittent fasting, blah, 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 which is super helpful for some people. And I think for men, it can be a great option long term, as this is as an example. But for women, I think women could benefit from fasting if they're doing it right. But long term, it's not as good as is it for men, because we're just so different.
I'm sure, and again, we're all pre-menopausal, so I'm sure post also things change, because you're not having a period and you're not ovulating. It's just interesting. And there's a million different facets to unpack and to look at and to talk about. I broke it down, like I said, into what I kind of define my areas of wellness to be, and then what that means. So I can jump into that, but why don't you read us your definition?
Oh, yeah.
As well.
Because I'm trying to take that word and make it something that is a positive word in my life. And me and my woo-woo shit. I said wellness is more of a holistic view of your well-being and existence in this world. Not just what size are you, not just what's your weight, not just, are you on a diet? It's like, do you wake up happy? Are you fulfilled? Are you like showing up in your relationships? Do you have energy because you are in a good metabolic state? Like, there's so much more to it than what you look like.
You can just call me Yoga with Adrian.
So cute. Hi, puppy.
That was Clyde. He's obsessed with standing on my chair and looking at me. Okay. I did not mean to distract you, but I figured him making a cameo would not be the worst thing in the world.
No, that was about it. I think it's more of like a holistic thing. I think like the biggest example is, you see bodybuilders or people in the fitness area where they look super healthy and they have six-pack abs, but they are depressed, or they have an eating disorder, or they are fine, but metabolically, because they're eating a bunch of just like macro-friendly things, and you have all this processed stuff, maybe their insides are not happy and they don't know yet. Like, there's just so many things that you can't see just by your eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have a six-pack of abs and then you could just be having raging diarrhea every morning. Or I bet you that there's a lot of women who look really healthy, but have, what's the word? Like with your body fat percentage being too low hormonally. I could see there being a lot of hormonal issues with women that look like they might be in really good shape, but don't have a normal cycle anymore, or just, like you said, the visual is often deceiving, and there's more to it than just the visual. I'm long-winded as hell, so obviously I broke these all down into my aspects of wellness. So I broke down my areas of wellness as my physical body, my spiritual self, which I sort of defined as a sense of awe and purpose. So feeling connected to something bigger than the world around me, my mind and mental health, my relationships. So that's kind of the way that I looked at it. The other big thing for me was kind of when looking at it from a wellness perspective instead of just health, made me kind of conceptualize that these aren't just individual little graphs or, individual little pockets. They're not each their own pie chart that I'm trying to fill up all the time. It's all interconnected and they all play off of each other. So I can't, if I neglect one, I'm negatively affecting the others. And so I kind of broke each one down. But basically, when I'm talking about my physical body, I kind of honed in on the two things that I really can do to help my physical body would be to eat well, or, what I put in my mouth, and then how I exercise. And then for, spirituality, having some type of a practice. We've talked about before how I think a creativity practice has been a big thing for me, and a gratitude practice. And journaling for me almost seems like prayer sometimes, not always because it's nonsense, but that can be just a good way for me to intentionally focus, instead of just, sitting somewhere and I don't know. Anyway, I find that to be really beneficial. And then for me, my mind and mental health, I don't even really like the word mental health anymore because I feel like it's tied into mental illness. I don't know. There just feels like a lot of negative connotations. And I think that talking about your mind is sort of a bigger term of just, if not even just physically how your brain's working, but just how you speak to yourself, my motivation levels. Do I feel like my mind is sharp and functioning well? Do I feel like I'm performing well at work? And for me too, the whole what's taking up my mind space. So am I doing a good job of keeping boundaries between my work time and my home time? Am I thinking about other people or random things more than the present moment? And then within that component, for me, a way to support that would be to have hobbies and just kind of having fun and free time. And then the last area, which you said this in yours too, was relationships. So for me, I kind of hit the big three of marriage, friendships, and myself. And then the universe or a higher power, and then keeping good boundaries within my own personal relationships.
That's perfect breakdown. I love that. I couldn't have done it any better. I agree completely with I like how you called it mind and not mental health. And even the spirituality piece, because it looks so different for people, even just calling it people say your mind, body, or soul, just something to fill your soul up, whether that's yoga, whether that's prayer, whether that's reading the Bible, whether that's journaling. It looks so different for people. And I think that's perfectly fine. Whatever connects your soul to whatever you believe in, I think that's what people need, because going through life just thinking or just spinning on this rock is really kind of depressing when you think about it. So knowing that there's more to this, it's okay, maybe today was a bad day, but it's not the end of the world. I don't know. I just really like how you said that. So for me, I think the most overarching theme for my why behind all of this is just like, I guess it breaks down to family when you get really, if you had to pinpoint it, because I need to be healthy for myself because that is the number one key because I want to show up for my family. But two, if I'm healthy, I can live long and be with my family for a long time. I want to be a role model for my kids. I want to show them good, healthy habits in all of those aspects that you kind of mentioned and broke down. And I don't want to even call it selfishly because it's actually selflessly. I want to get in a good state of mind and back to like good physical health and mind health for our next baby, like when we get pregnant again, because that is a whole thing that you're just like, oh, I have to like really hone in, and I want to be like mentally in a good spot, physically in a good spot. And I mean, you got to just be like, I would like to be on it in most aspects of my life to be able to carry another baby into this world in like a good, healthy environment. So that is the biggest why behind all of these aspects is for me and my family, which I feel like is a valid why. It's very motivating, so that's good.
Yeah. There was a thing that I was going to say because something you said made a light bulb go ding-a-ling in my mind. Oh, it was the spirituality piece. I think that's a big one that we neglect, and I'm excited when we eventually do that episode because I know we'll hone in on that one specifically. But like you said, the sense of purpose and feeling grounded and feeling tethered to something are a big deal. And a lot of us sort of have that disease of the soul. Sounds so fucking dramatic. But I think there's just a lot of almost like gut rot, but in our soul in America, because we get really focused on things that kind of don't matter in the long run. And it's easy to do, but we just get busy and then the busyness, and you don't appreciate the little day-to-day moments. And so I think for me, that is one thing that I can tell in myself when things are getting a little bit off kilter is when I just feel like I'm rushing through life and I'm not appreciating small moments during the day. And I can tell when I'm in a healthier place spiritually when it's the opposite, but it's being mindful and being present. And I really go back to the sense of awe and wonder, just going outside and being like, man, it's beautiful outside, or like, noticing a cool breeze in the midst of swamp season. And just some of those little things, or feeling like what you do matters. I think that's important. And however you get that and wherever you find it, I mean, as long as you're not hurting somebody else to feel purposeful, I think it's an important thing to discover and to explore. And it might be a moving target for people as your spiritual expression or your religious beliefs change. But that's been something that I realized was lacking since I sort of left a traditional church culture, that I've just in the last couple of years started to find my way back to, because we were built for community. And I think that you got to feel like there is something bigger than yourself, whether that's society at large or a specific deity, whatever. I think you've got to have something that connects all of us together and is bigger than you. Otherwise, I just think we get too grandiose in our thinking.
I agree 100%. And I would also throw in there, I don't know where this lands, and it's more of like an avoidance or something that's maybe negatively affecting our wellness. But man, when you're talking about like being present and oh, the breeze, like, oh, look at it's just a beautiful day. Like the birds are all around, flying around me, and it's beautiful. People can't see that, and I'm guilty of this. When I'm on my phone, and I'm always looking down. Everyone's always looking down nowadays. No one looks up. No one's just at a coffee shop looking around and people watching. Everyone's on their phone, looking down, not taking in the world, not observing the beauty, getting sucked into, like, that is something that somehow we maybe can talk about that in one of these things, because that is a soul trap and a mind trap these days and breaking the cycle and being able to just look up, first of all, for your safety, and second of all, to take in the beauty of life.
And for your eyeballs.
Yeah, like give your eye, look far into the distance at the horizon, because your eyes need a break, and you're gonna have to wear glasses soon because everyone's like this.
You're 100% right. As you said, that it also reminded me that nature and being in nature and being outside is a huge one. I feel just crispy and gross when I'm stuck inside all day.
Well, and this is another tangent we're not going to go down right now, but I was literally sitting in my office yesterday and it was quiet and I could hear what they call dirty electricity. The whole space was just buzzing. My computer monitor was buzzing, the AC was buzzing, the fridge appliance was buzzing. I mean, everything, it was loud. You know when silence is loud? It was just, ah! And I stepped outside because it was like, literally, I was like, I just need a break. And I mean, that's why people go on nature's. That's why people like go camping in nature without their phone and they're just there. It's a whole reset. Your literally your synergy in your body is reset when you ground in your nature because you don't have all the incoming input constantly attacking you, kind of. Ugh.
I had not really noticed it until there were like 2 key times in my life that I really noticed noise, background noise. One is when I lived in South America because I was in a city. I was in Medellin, Colombia. I don't know why I'm being cryptic about it, but there was just a lot of background noise. There were just cars at all hours of the day. And there's a lot of older vehicles over there and stuff like that too. So I think that just by nature, things are noisier, motorcycles, garbage cans, roosters, people, I don't know. I got used to all of that in the background. So then when I came home, I remember laying in my bed the first night thinking, it is silent as a tomb in here. Because I was so used to all of the noises. But the other big thing I noticed is you don't realize how much noise there just is in your neighborhood. Just background, cars, things happening. Because Jason and I, especially, I don't know, the last couple of years have made a point just to try to get out and take walks or go on. I don't feel right calling something a hike when you're on flat elevation the whole time. So we're trail walking, but I can't call it a hike. It's not strenuous, whatever. There is such a difference even, and I live in a pretty quiet neighborhood, but there's such a difference to when we get up into the state parks and there's not neighborhoods and you'll be walking and all you hear is the sound of the wind through the trees. And there's such a quiet and just lack of noise that's astounding to me. And I don't know, it makes me feel so much better. And I know not everybody's an outdoor person. And I also recognize a lot of people live in areas where you have to drive quite a distance to get to a space where it's like that. And I'm very fortunate to have just country roads and farms and state parks within an hour of where we live. But the other big concept that I did not know about until I read about it, I don't remember when, was the concept of visual noise. Have you ever heard of that? It is my favorite thing. And I didn't realize it until someone pointed it out. I was like, it is so true. There's always a billboard or a truck with a sign. Everything has words and just constant.
Everyone's vying for our attention and our eyeballs.
Constantly.
Yeah.
So when we go up to the mountains and there's not billboards anymore, I mean, it's so nice to spend days without seeing a slip and fall attorney's phone number. Because apparently that's 90% of the billboards in the South. You don't really realize there's a big exhale that happens when you get out of this. And it's not, we live in a lovely area. I mean, I'm not in a war zone. These are obviously first world problems, but I still have really come to value quiet visually and mentally and earfully.
I agree 1000%. I'm very excited to dive in. I think this sparked a lot of thoughts and I think we have a lot to dive into. I'm really excited. Do you have anything else to add on this like intro wellness?
No, I don't think so. I think I just wanted to point out that for both of us, it's an ebb and flow, and we recognize that it's something that's important to kind of keep in the forefront of your mind. And so diving in, I think we're going to start with our first, or like next week, being physical health and kind of how we support that and what are some things that we can put into practice. I know we're definitely going to do an episode on spiritual health and sort of our journey and where we've landed in that regard. What other areas do you remember that we want to specifically dive into?
I think, I like how you said relationships, and whether spiritual and mind health kind of go into each other if we want to split them up. I also find it very fascinating. And if we have a lot of women listening, we could do a whole episode on period health. So I think we have a couple things to figure out, and we can kind of play it by ear as we go through July. But definitely next week, come back for the physical health realm and avenue, because there's so much to that. And I'm excited to dive in, because that is, they all need work, but that is a big one for me that just vulnerably I need to do better at now that I've given birth for the first time. It is, we'll get into that next week. That's the teaser. So that's where we'll leave it today.
I'm excited. And I think what we're going to intend to do is set a goal for ourselves so that we can kind of check in on how we're doing and come up with one or two tangible, actionable items to promote wellness in that specific area each week. Yeah. So that way we can walk away with something to put into practice, and then you guys can either set your own goals or your own intentions with us and try to work on those each week, or you can do the same ones that we're doing. But either way, just to have something that is, like I said, tangible, actionable, and reasonable to accomplish.
I like it.
All right. Well, I'm excited to do this.
Ditto.
Oh, 5 seconds before we leave. Everybody, listen. We're going to be doing a new thing called Just the Tip. Where at the end of each episode, we give you guys a little tip for the week. A thing or a product or a person to follow or something that we find interesting. And like I said, this little mini segment within our mini series will be called Just the Tip.
That was my jingle. I'm sorry. That was not great, but it just came to my head. Do you have one? Because I actually have one that I just thought of.
You go do it.
Okay. You actually name dropped her in the beginning. I think it's the perfect segue into lots of different wellness things, but Yoga with Adriene. Check her out on YouTube. I can't even claim Kaylee put me on her. But I feel like yoga is always some sort of encompassing everything. You got the mind, you got the soul, you got the mental. What's the other one? Spiritual.
Spirit?
Yeah, thank you. I feel like yoga is an all-encompassing practice, and I really do enjoy her yoga videos on YouTube because they can be very, very beginner friendly, which is where I'm at. So you name dropped her earlier, and it made me think that's a perfect little tip of the week, is to check her out on YouTube.
I was actually thinking about her too.
I
will put in a plug for those of you who are new to yoga and are afraid that it'll be too woo-woo for you. She does a great job of making it so accessible. She makes the exercise itself accessible. She is funny and has a great sense of humor. Her dog is there, and she brings in the breath work and some of those things, but she is very much do it at your level and come here for what you want to be here for. So she's an OG on YouTube. I've known about her for years. I think she's been doing this for a very long time. But she's great, and Kayla's right. It's the perfect practice to put into play. So if you're joining us, plug in some yoga with Adriene this week, and then we'll join you next week to get into physical wellness.
Till next time.
See you next Tuesday.
Love you, bye.